history friends, and welcome back to the podcast that helps you learn a little bit of history. Today we're doing some more Greek mythology and I wanted to do Persephone. So for those of you watching, I'm going to do my makeup whilst I'm chatting to you. I'm going to do the makeup based on the vibes I think she gives off. For those of you listening to the podcast, don't forget to follow and give it as many stars as you think I deserve. And for those of you watching, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get going, shall we? So Persephone is the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, but you probably most likely know her as the wife of Hades because that's the reason we have the seasons. And we'll go into that story in detail in a little bit. She actually has two names, Persephone when being referenced as Hades' wife, queen of the underworld, and there's loads of variations, like in Homer she's Persephonia, or in lyric poetry she's Persephona. So essentially the same, but there's always different variations. And we could talk about her name variations forever, because of course there's loads more. But when she's being talked about as the daughter of Demeter, she's called Kore or Kor, which means the girl or the maiden. It's in the Homeric hymn to Demeter that we have the story of Persephone being seized by Hades while she's gathering flowers in the Vale of Nysa. And there's of course variations of the myth, so we'll do a sort of mashup and tell you every version possible. Also, sorry that I will be looking down quite a lot. My mirror is down there. Maybe I need to figure out a better setup, but I don't think you care. You're here for the history, so it's fine. So Persephone is in the Vale of Nysa, or the Meadows of Nysian, with her nymphs. They're collecting flowers, and she goes off on her own when suddenly the ground opens up and Hades appears in his chariot and he takes her off to the underworld. So her mother Demeter is of course devastated that her daughter has just been abducted by Hades and taken to the underworld, and she becomes really uninterested in her goddess duties, I suppose, so the fruitfulness of the harvest and the earth, and she causes a famine, but quite rightly so, I suppose, if your daughter's just been abducted by the Lord of the Underworld. Is he called the Lord of the Underworld? I don't know. Hades. She's been taken to the underworld. So Demeter and Hecate then search everywhere for Persephone, and it's said with like big flaming torches because they're all angry and they're looking for the missing girl. Fair enough. But because of that and the famine that she's caused, Zeus then has to step in and says that Hades has to free Persephone. It's also said in some versions that Zeus actually allowed for Hades to take her because he wanted to marry Persephone, but he knew that Demeter wouldn't approve, so he gave Hades the idea of take her. Realised he screwed up and then said that Hades had to free her. And it said that Demeter found out that Zeus had played a part in it, and that's when she then refuses to let Earth have any fruitfulness or harvest, basically, and that's when Zeus decides that she has to be freed. So, like a lot of stories, Zeus is a pig, and that is why we have the story we're talking about. But this is where we have the legend of the pomegranate seeds. So because Persephone had eaten, some say a single pomegranate seed, some say a handful, and some say specifically 6. Either way, she's eaten Hades, the fruit of Hades, which I hate as a saying, but because she's eaten in the underworld, she can't ever be completely free. So she has to go back to the underworld for 1/3 of the year, and she spends the rest of the year with her mother. And that's where we have the seasons, meaning that the 4 months of the year she's away from her mother, that's when we have winter. And then the rest of the year, that's when we have spring and summer, and we have harvests and good food and weather. And that explained for the ancient Greeks why they struggled in the winter and had full harvests in the summer. But in the story where she ate 6, it's because she was tricked by Hades into eating 6, and she has to spend 6 months of the year back down in Hades or the underworld. Essentially, she can never truly leave. And for those of you watching, I can't decide between these two palettes. One's Naked Heat and one's Naked Cherry, the Urban Decay palettes. I think maybe we'll go with Cherry, that's more Persephone vibes, and if we ever do Hades, let me know. And remind me we'll use that one, because I just think these colours are very her. Let me know what you think. Or just exposed to what the window is. Ah, there you go, you can see me filming. One source I read says that the Homeric hymn tells us about her abduction, whereas another source said that Homer just describes her as Hades' wife and queen, and the abduction isn't mentioned until later when Hesiod writes his Theogony. So the usual case with ancient mythology, there's lots of different versions to choose from. But this story makes her a dual deity. She's queen of the underworld, but she's also a goddess of fertility from her mother. She's often represented holding her pomegranate, which makes sense as well. It is the most famous or most well-known story surrounding her mythology. So if she's being shown as the wife of Hades, she's holding her pomegranate, whereas if she's been shown in relation to Demeter or on her own or as a goddess of fertility, she's holding or associated with a cornucopia, which is the horn of plenty. She does, of course, have other stories, like you might remember in the last episode we spoke about Aphrodite and Adonis. Well, Persephone also loved Adonis, and the two goddesses, Persephone and Aphrodite, quarrelled over him so much that Zeus had to intervene, and he told Adonis that he was to split the year in two, spend 6 months with Aphrodite and 6 months with Persephone. But when it came for his time to go down to the underworld, he didn't go. Did he love Aphrodite more, or did Aphrodite trick him? Who knows? You decide. But, of course, Persephone was jealous, and so sent a wild boar to kill him. So then she had him forever. There's also the story of Minth or Minthy. So Persephone obviously did not care for her husband, didn't really care about his infidelity, as you might expect, because she probably just didn't like him. She was abducted by him, so fair enough. But there was a nymph called Minthy, who may have been one of Hades' past lovers, and she boasted that she was more beautiful than Hades' new lover, and that one day she would get him back. And Persephone, of course, did not enjoy that comment for some reason, so decided to turn her into the mint plant, just to make sure that her claims would not be true and that she wouldn't ever get Hades back. She did also use her powers as queen of the underworld. I suppose she's got to make the best of it, make it interesting for herself. And some myths say that she made the decisions when it came to mortals, like by letting Orpheus try to escape with Eurydice, or letting Heracles take Cerberus. And she let someone soul swap. One time King Pirithous of the Lapis, along with the hero Theseus, tried to abduct Persephone, and he ended up fixed to a seat in Hades forevermore. So she didn't always let people mess with her. And I think we should end this video again by reading her story from one of my books. And I think we'll go with the Mighty Goddess again, because that has a retelling. I think it's of Demeter and Persephone. But that's okay. Mother and daughter can tell their story together. Bear with, let me go get it. So we are back with the Mighty Goddess world myths, and we've got Demeter and Persephone from Greece. The procession followed the sacred way out of Athens, through the hills, over narrow stone bridges, along dusty tracks to Eleusis. The crowds were singing, praying, carrying flowers. They were following a mother searching for her lost daughter. They were going to participate in the mysteries. And like mother and daughter, they would go down into the unknown in order to return. Initiates would make sacrifices of wild pigs, undertake purification rituals, fast, dress in unworn robes, dance around the maiden's well, and drink holy barley water. Only then could they enter the darkness of the chamber and take part in the most sacred rite of all. There, initiates would witness what would never be revealed, never ever spoken of. They are blessed who have seen such things. Demeter, the goddess of grain, mother of the harvest, the very matter of the earth. She has one daughter, her beloved Persephone. Who was this maiden's father? It might have been Demeter's own brothers, Zeus or Poseidon. Perhaps it was Dionysus, or the hunter Iasian. All took Demeter against her will. Fury filled Demeter, and she transformed into Erinyes, goddess of anger. Righteous rays seized the entire world, and the fury only ceased when Demeter washed it away in the river Ladon. From one or all of these Demeter bore her daughter. One day Persephone was walking through the meadows with her friends Athene and Artemis. The maidens were picking spring flowers, filling their arms with crocus, violets, iris and hyacinths. Persephone picked and picked, breathing in the heavenly scent. She gathered flowers into the folds of her gown and left her friends far behind. Then she saw a strange flower with 100 petals. She bent to pick it up, but its roots dug deep into the earth. Persephone pulled at the stem, and the ground shook. The earth opened up, and a gaping hole appeared. A few wild pigs grazing nearby tumbled down the hole, disappearing into the darkness. There was a rumble, and 4 black horses charged out of the depths, dragging a golden chariot. Holding the reins was Hades, lord of the dead. He pulled the horses to a stop. "What beauty is this? A living girl to be my bride. I am so lonely in the underworld. You will light up my kingdom." Hades reached out, plucked Persephone from the ground and pulled her into his chariot. Persephone cried for help, but her voice was lost on the wind. The goddess Hecate, sitting in her cave, wearing her silver headdress, heard the maiden's cry. She looked up from her work for a moment, but saw nothing. Hades cracked his whip, and the horses hurtled down to the realm of stone. And gems. That's why I've got a gem headband on. The horses raced beneath towering rocks, beside the boiling lakes and smouldering fields of lava. Then the horses rose into the air and flew above a cold green river, the river Styx, that divides the world of the living from the world of the dead. On the other side of the river were the iron gates of the Underworld, protected by the three-headed monster Cerberus, guardian of hell. The beast saw its master and sank to the ground, bowing its 3 heads, and the gates swung open. Hades led Persephone into his underworld. The stone walls were shot through with glistening seams of silver and gold. The Lord of the Dead took Persephone to a throne studded with jewels. "Now you are queen of the underworld," he said. "All this belongs to you." Persephone did not speak. She refused to eat, drink, or sleep, and would only weep. Sorry, I've just moved you a bit closer, and more of my hair has fallen out my headband. Oh well. The wind carried the faint sound of Persephone's cry to the goddess Demeter. She felt a sharp pain in her heart, knowing it was her daughter. Demeter wrapped herself in a cloak and took a burning torch in each hand. The goddess walked through long, hot days, wandering the earth, searching for her daughter. At night the goddess held her torches high, but did not find her dear Persephone. Demeter came to a crossroads, and standing in the centre was a woman, wearing a shimmering headdress and holding a torch. She was turning, shining her light down each road, illuminating the way ahead. It was Hecate, goddess of the 3 ways. "Lady Demeter, bringer of ripeness, giver of gifts, I know what you are searching for, and you will not find it on these roads. I heard a maiden cry, but I did not see who took your daughter. Let us speak to Helios. The sun god sees everything." The 2 goddesses stood before the sun god. Helios nodded. Hades took her in broad daylight. Demeter sobbed. "Why weep?" said Helios. "This is a good marriage. Persephone will be queen." Demeter let out a howl. "This is not good or a marriage. She has been abducted, stolen. Both mother and daughter, taken against our wills. This crime will be paid for." Demeter's weeping turned to rage. She wandered the earth howling. Her hair turned grey with grief, and her divine glory disappeared, until no one recognized her. The great goddess had become an ordinary old woman. She came to the kingdom of Eleusis, and, worn out, sat down beside the maiden's well. 4 girls carrying brass pitchers came to draw water. They were the king's daughters, Callidice, Cleisidice, Demo, and Calitho. They did not recognize the goddess, and asked, "Where have you come from, lady? We have not seen you before." "Dear children," said Demeter, "I was taken by pirates. They travelled here, and I escaped." Demeter began to cry. "Come and rest in the shade of our palace," said the girls. Demeter was taken to the palace kitchen, but could not stop weeping. Kitchen maid Iambe offered her warm bread and barley water with mint. Demeter refused, and sat with her head in her hands. The kitchen maid did not insist. Instead, Iambe told a joke. Demeter lifted her head. Iambe told a ruder joke with sound effects. Demeter stopped weeping. Then Iambe raised her blouse and shook her hips. A smile flickered across Demeter's lips. Iambe lowered her skirt, opened her legs, and revealed her womb. Demeter saw a baby gurgling, pink and cozy inside Iambe's womb. Demeter laughed too, then accepted the cool drink. That is a bizarre bit of the story. Wise Iambe, your golden tongue will be remembered thousands of years from now. Iambe laughed even harder. Why would a simple kitchen maid ever be remembered? Demeter felt refreshed. In return for royal hospitality, she taught the princesses the skills of needlework, of making patterns with thread. She took care of the princess's mother, Queen Metanira, who had just given birth to a baby boy. The goddess took the baby in her lap, breathed sweet breath on him, and fed him from her own breast. At night, when the queen was asleep, Demeter would light a fire from her torch and place the baby like a log into the flames. Queen Metanira admired how her boy grew so fast and seemed to glow with health. One night the queen awoke to the smell of smoke. She peeped from her chamber and saw Demeter placing the baby in a fire. The queen screamed with terror and the flames went out. The queen rushed to save her son and found her baby was completely unharmed. Demeter began to change. Her grey hair turned gold. Her aged body regained its goddess glory, filling the room with divine light. "I was not harming your child," said the goddess. "I was giving your son immortality. Now he will die like any mortal, but because he lay in my lap, his life will be blessed." "Great goddess of grain, forgive me. I did not know it was you," said Queen Metanira. "What may we do for you?" "Build me a temple above the maiden's well. Create a dancing floor on the spur of the hill. Follow my sacred rites, honour my mysteries. This will comfort my soul." Demeter continued searching and asking. She walked across earth for a whole year and did not find her daughter. High up in the meadows she met a young lad, Triptolemus, tending his animals. He showed Demeter a deep hole. "I lost my pigs down there." Demeter stared into the darkness. This was where her daughter had gone. She placed a stalk of barley in the lad's hand. "Plant this, you will become rich." Triptolemus had no idea how a single plant could make him rich, but went home, dug the soil and planted the stalk. Demeter fell to her knees and cried, "Curse you, cruel earth! You do not deserve to bear fruit if you keep my daughter underground." A cold wind began to blow. The wind tore leaves from the trees and plants from roots. Bitter cold spread across the world, and nothing grew. Flowers, fruits, and barley lay hidden underground. The great goddess wrapped herself in her cloak and sat weeping, waiting for the world to die of hunger. It was a year of biting misery, winter without end. The gods begged Demeter to remove her curse. "Bring my daughter," she replied. Zeus called his messenger, "Hermes, my swift one. Find Persephone and bring her back so Demeter will make earth green again." Hermes, with golden staff and winged sandals, flashed down to the realm of the dead and into Hades' shady kingdom. Persephone was sitting on the jewelled throne with Hades beside her. She was no longer weeping, and her radiant beauty filled the underworld with light. Hermes bowed. "I come with a message. Zeus calls Persephone home. Earth is dying. Nothing grows. Hades, you must let her go." Hades was silent. Persephone held her breath, waiting for him to speak, and the underworld waited too. At last Hades said, "Persephone, flower of my life, I was so lonely before you came. I do not want to lose you. Even the rocks and stones love you, but Father Zeus cannot be disobeyed." Persephone leapt to her feet, then Hades clapped his hands, and a golden platter appeared, heaped with pomegranate seeds. "Wait, my queen," said Hades. "All this time no food has passed your lips." Hades held out the plate. "Eat before you go. It will give you energy for your journey." Oh, so he was the trickster in this version. The pomegranate seeds looked so red and plump they seemed to glow. Suddenly Persephone felt hungry. She reached out, took a seed and popped it into her mouth. She crushed the seed against her tongue, and tangy juice burst inside her mouth. Persephone pressed 2 more seeds between her lips. Then Hermes took her hand, and they flew from dark to light. Demeter looked up, and there was her daughter. She flung her arms around Persephone and hugged her tight. Mother and daughter were reunited. They clasped hands and walked home. With each step Persephone took, green shoots of barley pushed out of the earth. Wheat grew thick around their ankles. Corn rippled gold, tickling their legs. The air was filled with the sound of birds singing. Persephone had returned, and spring had come at last. Demeter spread the table with fresh bread, white cheese, dark olives, and cool barley water. Hecate came to welcome Persephone home. "I'm starving," said Persephone, and she reached towards the food. "You didn't eat, my daughter, did you? You didn't eat the food of the underworld?" "No, mother, no food passed my lips," said Persephone, sucking an olive stone, "except—" "Except what?" said Demeter. "Just 3 pomegranate seeds, 3 tiny little seeds." Demeter began to cry. "Oh, Persephone, the food of the dead must not pass the lips of the living. The living must not eat the food of the dead. For those 3 seeds I will lose you." For 3 months of each year Persephone returns to the underworld. Hades rejoices. He is no longer lonely, and the rocks and stones welcome back their queen. Persephone felt she had come home. But while Persephone is underground, winter comes to earth. It is cold, and crops lie buried in the ground. Persephone spends 3 winter months in the underworld. Then ice melts, the ground grows soft, and Persephone returns. Demeter hugs her daughter and spreads a feast of flowers. Earth bears fruit, and we have spring again. Then Demeter picks the barley to make bread, knowing, like all mothers, that for anything to grow it must winter underground, knowing that life depends on death, laughter on tears, spring on winter. As for Iambe's golden tongue, her jokes, poems, stories spread around the world, and the iambic metre of poetry is still famous thousands of years later. And where Triptolemus, or Triptolemus maybe, planted the single stalk, a whole field of barley grew, and he became rich. All became mothers and all became daughters in the Eleusinian mysteries. Initiates dance around the maiden's well in an endless circle, forever changing, old to young, young to old, mother to daughter, daughter to mother. The cycle repeats for eternity. And it is said that the most sacred rite of all, the secret never to be spoken of, was when a basket was opened and a single stalk of barley was held up in the lamplight. Then the minds and the hearts of the initiates would burst open, become illuminated, and they would truly comprehend how all life depends on Persephone's journey. Even though the myth of Persephone is not part of religious life in contemporary Greece, the story is still remembered. On New Year's Eve, people crack pomegranates on their doorsteps to bring good luck for the coming year. At weddings, pomegranates are broken and the seeds rolled across the ground to bring happiness and fertility. At funerals, a dish made of pomegranate seeds is prepared in honour of the dead. In some villages in Sicily, villagers cut down spring branches and shape them into figures of Persephone. Then they parade around the fields with her figure to encourage growth. And you eat Demeter each morning when you eat cereal. The English word for cereal comes from the Roman version of Demeter, the goddess Ceres. In Greece, the word for cereal is Demetra. And there we have it. The story of Persephone and Demeter. Thank you all very much for watching or listening. I do hope you've enjoyed. Let me know if you did in the comments if you're watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.